Hello and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast week in mobile games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz. I remembered to introduce myself this week, didn't last week. With me today, we've got Aaron Astle's back, our news editor. How you doing, Aaron? What have you been up to?
Yeah, doing all right, thank you. I feel like I've got slightly less exciting stories to bring from my personal life than last week. So I think last week was my return after a few weeks off, or was that the one before already? Anyway,
Too much partying, Aaron. You can't remember
yeah,
which.
I can't keep up with what happened when. But no, it's quite a quiet week for me, really. Been playing some Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I got for my birthday a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Which has been quite fun.
Is that like a 200-hour game?
If you want to do everything, yeah. I'm going to see how it goes.
I do want to play them. I haven't played them, but the just how long they seem to be puts me off.
Because Xenoblade 3, I would argue, up there as one of the best games of all time. For me.
Okay.
2 is very good as well. It feels like it's always a hard sell on 2 because you have to get through maybe like 5 to 10 hours of it being okay. And that is a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And then it's like brilliant once you're past like the 10-hour mark. But obviously that is a high investment for someone to...
That's the classic thing that I do in TV shows. I'm like, well, if you get past the first season, it's like 10 hours.
But because I'd say 3, so Xenoblade 3 is more consistently very good. 2 maybe has higher highs but lower lows, whereas 3 is just pretty consistently like a good like 9 out of 10. So
best game ever, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, it has a few 10s. I think it peaks about 3/4 of the way through is the only thing. So you kind of, it's not bad at the end, but they didn't save the best till last. It's my only little criticism. But yeah, we'll have to see how X goes. I'm quite enjoying it so far.
It reminded me of the is it The Guardian, or it was one of the British newspapers when Skyfall came out. It was getting a lot of critical acclaim, and their review of this franchise that had was at that point, I don't know, 23, 24 films or whatever it was. Best Bond ever, 4 out of 5. Okay, so all the other ones weren't that great.
Yeah, I'd say giving it a 9 out of 10 there was, I think, I'll say, because 2 has higher high points. So if that is where 10 is, then 3 doesn't ever quite hit the same heights for me, but it is much more consistently up there. So yeah, you should definitely check the series out if you haven't.
I'm just kidding. They're just numbers.
Yeah,
it's a good game.
I'll give it a 9.2.
You're very good. Oh, you go for that system. You're going very granular, bringing it back. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, what have you been up to?
Already going off on a tangent. So, no, this week, we were just discussing before. I was like, what have I done? I don't know. Once again, I've been to a nice cocktail bar, a jazz bar in London that I like. They had a live act. It wasn't actually jazz, but it was very good. It's like I don't know, I just like finding these places in London where it's like a busy part of town, but then the actual place has a nice vibe, but it's also, there's a lot of people in it, but it's quite quiet. It was really nice, actually. Right, so I'm going to jump into the news. There's been a few big stories this week. One big story in particular that we'll discuss. But before we get there, the usual shout out. So we've got a bunch of events coming up. Dubai Game Expo Summit, powered by Pocket Gamer Connects on May 7th and 8th. PGC Barcelona, June 3rd to 4th. PGC Summit in Shanghai, July 30th. PGC Helsinki, October 7th and 8th. We've got the Mobile Games Awards in August. We'll have PGC Jordan later this year. And we do have some other events that I'm not sure we've announced. So go back a couple podcasts and Chris says what they are. But yeah, we'll be announcing those in due course. And I'll also be at... how can I forget? I'll also be at Gamescom Latam in a couple of weeks, just before I head off to Dubai. So I'll be in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Really looking forward to that. If you want to meet up, drop me a message on email, LinkedIn, or wherever. So onto the news. The big story of the week that I'll attempt to wade through. I'm not an economist, as is evident. So obviously, last week we spent it talking a bit about the Switch 2, and it impacts that as well. Is the news of Trump's tariffs, which have sent the global economy kind of crashing and recuperating so we're recording this on Thursday, as of end of yesterday and today. It was announced, I think, last Wednesday in the most ridiculous way possible. I just feel like I'm living in a TV show, which I think is exactly how it's supposed to feel. And so it gets announced on this big board. Here's the reciprocal tariffs, and basically the US, the Trump administration is trying to balance trade with what it sees kind of these imbalances. And they call it reciprocal tariffs, but it's not. So some of the percentages, some of the tariffs that were initially kind of dealt out. So China was hit with 34% tariffs on top of existing tariffs against it. It imposed 46% tariffs on Vietnam. I think 20 something percent on India. The UK got 10%, which is the baseline for basically everyone, except a few countries which kind of avoided it for various reasons. But anyway, yeah, so these are called reciprocal tariffs, and then they put out these like the formula of how they got to this. And just when I watch the news, seeing the experts talk about it, they're like, it doesn't actually make sense, and it's like these Greek letters that they've put together. But what's actually happened is from that, I think they've devised that. I can't remember how it works now. It's like exports minus imports, something like that, divided by 2. And then you get to these percentages. And it all completely ignores why, in most cases, why there's a trade imbalance if you're going to do it like that, because it's not to do with tariffs on American goods. So Vietnam is kind of becoming a manufacturing center. And the way they make their money is to export to kind of a rich country like America, right? And then they can make money. It's not going to work the other way round. That's not how. Again, I'm not an economist, so I'm sort of muddying my way through this, but that's not how like capitalism works, is it? It's forcing people to basically buy your goods. The Trump administration wants more manufacturing at home, fair enough, but you can't change that overnight, which is what they've basically tried to do. It's going to take years. So what, in the meantime, the world's just supposed to suffer. Again, it kind of, I guess it kicks it all off, gives a shock to the system, but like, it affects everyone. Everyone's retirement funds would blow up, well, could have blown up, but now there's a 90-day reprieve, thank God, for most countries, although China's now slapped with, I think, 100 and something percent, 120 something percent tariffs as a trade war kind of kicks off there, which is pretty bad for everyone as well. Somehow, allegedly, they're going to negotiate with 75 countries new tariff deals in 90 days. Apparently in 80 days. Just, it's not going to happen either. You can't do a big, expansive trade deal in that time frame. If you consider, like, when the European Union has done trade deals with other countries, they've taken years. So you just got to put something together. Again, it just doesn't make much sense to me. So anyway, the consequences of this for games and tech, share prices started tumbling. Like, the stock markets were definitely diving quite a lot. And then Wednesday was when the tariffs kicked in. And then by Thursday, they're not. And Nintendo, which I think has manufacturing in China and Vietnam, they were moving some of it out of China to avoid, I think, the regulations and tariffs. And then they just get slapped with it in Vietnam. So they've delayed pre-orders in the US, Canada, and now China after literally just announcing, well, the release date hasn't changed, but after literally just announcing pre-orders on the release date. And then obviously Apple, it's like they've lost hundreds of billions of dollars in their market cap. And then obviously other smartphone manufacturers it would affect, like Samsung. So we looked earlier this week, like all the tech companies all the big tech companies in the US, and like a lot of major publishers or games companies kind of seeing their shares go down. A lot of them have gone back up, but like at least the last time I looked, which was yesterday, they hadn't gone up back past last Wednesday. So you're hearing on the news at the moment, biggest surge since the financial crisis in 2008, single day. Stock markets have rebounded. I don't know. I mean, I don't feel that. I have some shares, right, and I'm not feeling that. They tanked quite a lot, and then they've risen, but have not risen back to what they were. So yeah, we put a few articles out about it. We had Louise Waldridge from Ampere Analysis talking to us. Yeah, she was basically again saying the most immediate concern of the tariffs is the switch to again talking about the Vietnam tariff, which was a big blow. Ultimately, it could affect the prices of the hardware. We'll see what we'll see what Nintendo does. Be very difficult for them to raise the price just after they've announced it. Apparently, well, there was concern that iPhones cost hundreds of dollars more in America. None of this is good. And then ultimately, if some of this still leads to, if this still leads to a recession, it's a 90-day reprieve and the China trade war's still going. So a lot can happen. Things could just change overnight as well, for all we know. Negotiations don't go well for a few days and they get slapped with tariffs. Like a recession will mean, well, that'll just impact games anyway because people have less money to then spend on entertainment. And we've now proven that games aren't recession proof. And it's just as the games industry is getting back on its feet as well after a really rough few years. This is just not what the world needed. And America, this is as political as I'll get on this, but some of the rhetoric coming out is mad. Like, just looking at it from the outside of America, they're slapping these ridiculous tariffs on countries. There's nothing to do with the tariffs against them. And then when a country says, what the hell, and does it back at the same rate, then Trump's or people from the administration is coming out on TV and going, well, that's so ridiculous. Why would they? They're so offensive that they do that, and then they double the tariffs. It's like, what is this? What do you expect? You can't just punch someone in the face and then they'll go thank you. What? It's a strange time we're living in. Anyway, I'll stop there because at large I probably don't know what I'm talking about. But what do you think, Aaron? That you've seen?
So obviously I'm quite a big Nintendo guy, so I've been seeing quite a lot of speculations and conversations around how they may or may not have affected the kind of Switch 2 pricing that we talked a bit about last week. So I guess from that angle, obviously not great for consumers if the tariffs do end up meaning that it costs more to get games and consoles in America. There seems to be quite a lot of conflicting information out there as to whether the tariffs have Nintendo kind of pre-planned for the tariffs and upped their prices, or whether they could still go up even higher than what we heard last week in response to them, which I think would be quite a blow for people that already feel it's on the more expensive end if they go up even more before the Switch comes out.
I think I get that. Again, not an economist, but when people say that, maybe they took the tariffs into consideration when they did the pricing, I think, yeah, fair enough. But the level of the levies is I think just way higher than anyone had anticipated for a lot of countries. So that just throws, how can you plan for that? So that's the big story of the week. I feel like by the time this episode comes out, it will probably have all changed again. It's been an insane week. It's gone from, here are the tariffs, we're not budging. Okay, it's on pause. Mad, absolutely mad.
It's been unpaused by the time it goes.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point. Be aghast. Right. So what else in news, Aaron?
Yeah. So hopefully something a little bit lighter. So a Minecraft movie has earned $301 million. That's over just its first 2 days in theatres. Global figure, which is a lot of money. It was reported that the production budget was about 150 million. So just within its first 2 days, it already doubled how much it costs to make in revenue earned. Which
plus marketing.
Yeah, true. But obviously a very strong start for it. Apparently, 52% of that initial 2-day revenue figure came from the US. It was about 157 million people spent going to watch the film. That was according to Box Office Mojo. So obviously, Minecraft's a very big IP. I think we've kind of been seeing a rise in video game films not being universally hated in the last decade, maybe not quite that long yet. But it feels like they always used to just be assumed it was going to be awful, even if you're a fan of the franchise. Whereas there does seem to have been a bit of a shift to, even if they're not universally loved, there's certainly audiences that are enjoying the video game films more these days. Quite a few of my friends and stuff have gone to see it. Apparently, it can get quite rowdy in there, which is
So I've seen the clips. Have you seen them? Like doing the rounds.
of people like applauding and
So usually it's to do with the chicken fight, right? And then that's the scene that's kind of going viral, where people are in the cinemas. Yeah, it's just people like screaming. But then like people start taking it to extreme levels. Like there was one where people actually brought in a real chicken to the cinema,
right.
and then started. Honestly, it's mad. There's quite a lot of them, and then they start
Mm.
frying loads of stuff around the cinema, and then obviously the whole thing gets paused and they get chucked down. And then there's just an image of this chicken just walking around in the lobby.
Right.
The interesting thing that I've also noticed is that, like, some of the reviews see so again, it might be the Guardian or so, they give it like 1 star out of 5. It looks like the critics don't like it that much.
Mm.
While maybe fans love it. I think that's interesting that you can kind of do a film that hits a lot of the beats that the massive player base the massive fan base you already have will love, but it doesn't do anything potentially. I haven't seen it, but it doesn't do anything like
for the kind of
this sounds like criticism, but to like elevate it for a critic to be like, oh, this is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's probably true for quite a few of the video game films. I don't feel like I've seen any that like I don't remember Detective Pikachu getting like Oscar nominations or anything. Although I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a great film.
I really enjoyed the it's not a game one, but like the Lego movie, because they actually not they actually did like a little bit extra, right? It wasn't just Lego. Then they sort of came out of that world and did a bit more. And then with Barbie, they do a bit more than you expect. I think with the IP, you could have easily just been, oh, here's a kids film, but what you actually get is quite. They touch upon like quite big topics in a really interesting way, like the patriarchy and stuff. Like you just don't really expect to see that in your Barbie film, but they did it really well. I don't know what the point is I'm trying to make. I think in general, like the quality of these things has got a lot better, other than the Borderlands film. So moving on, we've got a few more news stories we want to cover. So I don't think we got to this last week. I think it happened just after we recorded the podcast. But AppLovin, the ad tech firm that's fast growing, but also getting a lot of flack from short sellers, which are trying to tank its stock and then possibly buying it back again to catch it on the rise. AppLovin's found itself in the news a lot, and now it wants to buy TikTok along with, I think, everyone else. So that kind of comes from TikTok is obviously effectively banned in the US. Right now, it's allowed to keep running, but it has to divest or kind of it will go offline. It was given a 75-day, 90-day reprieve again. Again by Trump, someone else that gets a reprieve for a deal to happen. So basically, the US rights to TikTok is really what's on the table. That has now. So we actually got to the day before the deadline, and then it's been extended for another 75 days while a deal can take place. Couple interesting things were that when Adam Frugi, the AppLovin CEO, is talking about it, he basically said at one point, I think it was on CNBC, that he was asked like, who have you actually spoken to? And I think it was just they've kind of sounded out their interest to the Trump administration, haven't actually talked to ByteDance or anyone in China, at least at that stage. And then when the deadline was extended, I think there was a story that is basically saying a deal had actually been agreed, or almost, been agreed before the deadline extension. And I think TikTok would still own like a 20% stake. So that would suggest that AppLovin it wasn't them and they don't really stand much of a chance. Assuming everything that we hear coming out is true. Whether the extension to the deadline gives AppLovin a chance. So they think they're the best choice. AppLovin actually wants to acquire or as he put it, like partner merge with TikTok's entire international business outside of China so that they can kind of combine TikTok's recommendation algorithm with its own kind of ad personalization algorithm. And they said that TikTok was under-monetized even, which I thought was interesting as well. Because it makes a lot of money. Most of it is in China, but it's still, obviously it makes a tremendous amount of money. If you put it like that, it kind of it does. If you just looked at it like that, not the rest of how that deal will be made up, it kind of makes sense. But then, I think Oracle is in for a bid, and they actually run TikTok's cloud service, so that would also make sense, right? And then Amazon's just Amazon, isn't it? It's got a load of money to kick around, so it could be there or a consortium of some degree. In the coming months, we should hear more on that. I think it's sort of a roadblock going back to tariffs has been hit, because China is obviously like, well, you can't, like, they're going to block the sale basically because of the tariffs. And how do you, when they're in the middle of a trade war and neither side wants to back down, it could escalate further. I don't know. It would be surprising to me if a deal was done for TikTok in the US, but you never know. What do you think, Aaron? You're a big TikTok fan.
I am. You can't get me off of it. No, I mean, it all just seems a bit chaotic, really. Obviously, you had it briefly going down back in January, and then suddenly it was back. I'm a bit of a loss for words on it, to be honest. I just don't know what's going to happen.
It's just, again, just kind of, it feels like the state of the world that we're in. It's all ridiculous. One other thing to say is it could affect, in the end, it could end up affecting other Chinese companies in America. The law that is getting TikTok banned does open it up to other companies potentially. I think one of the concerns is Tencent obviously has a lot of investments in the US, including in like Epic Games. ByteDance has actually already had to kind of split itself apart from the games, some of the games it publishes. Skystone Games has picked up the publishing rights to Marvel Snap, and they've also picked up the US publishing rights to Mobile Legends from Moonton, which is owned by ByteDance. So it already affects other apps, not just TikTok. I guess those deals were easier to do because they're not on that same level. But Marvel Snap's not a small game. Mobile Legends is not a small game. Even in the US, for a mobile, it does pretty well. Anyway, wild times. What else have you got, Aaron?
Yeah, so the next one from me, kind of loosely on a similar trend. So Supercell is kind of going all in on celebrity marketing. So they've kicked off a new Clash Mania season in Clash of Clans. And so there's various like celebrity and IP partnerships going on with the Clans Village has changed into like an arena, like a wrestling type thing. And so they've got a trailer with some WWE superstars in it, like Cody Rhodes and Rhea Ripley, which, yes, they're not the first like wrestlers to ever be in Supercell advertising. Like John Cena was in advertised Squadbusters, I think it was last year.
Like Brawl Stars with SpongeBob, of course.
And yeah, so I guess it kind of just continues this thing we're seeing of celebrities advertising games, either being in them, like with Minecraft and Jack Black and Jason Momoa and stuff, or there just seem to be loads of cases lately. Like you had Will Ferrell voicing like the Monopoly man in Monopoly Go adverts, and Chris Hemsworth was the Barbarian in when Squadbusters was coming out, and now we got like WWE people advertising Supercell stuff.
It's like a whole event as well, right? It's Clash-mania. So when I saw the WWE Clash of Clans trailer, and I was just suddenly like, Supercell have been doing this a lot, this celebrity marketing, like with all of their games, like their bigger games. And so we had that. I've had the freaking Michael Bolton "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You" song stuck in my head now for the past week because of the Barbarian duet for Clash Royale. I'm actually furious with Supercell about it. I can't get rid of it. And then they did Gordon Ramsay for Heyday as well.
Yeah, that was quite good.
Yeah, that was really good actually. And then you mentioned some of the others. Erling Haaland last year, Clash of Clans. But I guess I was just thinking, when I look at the data, I don't see generally. I haven't seen like for the Clash of Clans event, which is pretty big. But I don't know. Are they making like a lot of money out of these deals? Like, what is their goal? Because obviously, celebrity partnerships is going to be very expensive, and they don't always really work out. Like,
Yeah,
it's cool to see, you remember Pedro Pascal doing Merge Mansion, or Ryan, well, no one remembers this, but Ryan Reynolds doing, I can't even remember the game, Toy Blast or Toon Blast, or maybe both. That was a massive deal, and they did loads of different creatives, and I think it just flopped entirely. So please, someone correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think that whole campaign just absolutely flopped. Luckily, the games were incredibly good. Peak was fine. Yeah, it just seems very. Just wondering what the goal is. So obviously, they're now kind of spinning off into film and TV. They're hiring someone to lead that and adapt their IPs to other mediums, which I thought was interesting. Because I wonder if some of these celebrity partnerships are kind of to empower that IP a bit, kind of get it connected with these other big names in really interesting campaigns. And it kind of gets it in everyone's minds a bit more as like an even bigger thing.
mm.
I wondered if that was part of the play there, or it could just be they've got loads of money. It's cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, because like from a kind of user acquisition side, I guess it's hard. I guess maybe I'm just slightly impervious to the advertising. I don't know, but like if you've not played an older game that is really well known, like Clash of Clans or something that's been around for a long time, I don't see how seeing a trailer for it or an advert for it in like 2025 with a celebrity in, even if you like that celebrity, whether it's like, well, now I'm going to try this game because this celebrity advertised it.
That is how it works, though.
I just don't
the point of
understand it, but I get that's.
But also to your point, I just wonder how big the impact is versus the money you spend versus the money you get.
Yeah.
But it feels like maybe they're just trying to help their brands a bit. Whilst kind of maybe they're expanding it. Well, I guess they are with film TV expanding a bit more into an entertainment company long term, not just games. Because obviously Ilka has always said his admiration for Nintendo and how they'd like to be like that, build these forever franchises, these IPs that people love, and so I guess it's a natural extension for them to expand into different mediums, I guess. But anyway, I'm going to go through very quickly this last story. So we've got another Supercell story. They've kind of rebranded their investment arm, so they're giving it a new website, Supercell Investments, and they are looking to fund yet more games. It's actually surprising how many deals they've already done. More kind of recent times and last few years. App Livery, App Charge, Bitmagic, Future Run. Obviously, they did Metacore before, and some others that have kind of come and gone. Like I think they've had a bit of a spotty past in investments, especially early on. Obviously, not everything works out. It hasn't always gone to plan. So the investment arm aims to back studios at early stage and later, funding development teams across platforms as well as games tech companies. They said they offer early funding and growth capital, operational independence, and they bring industry expertise and a community of more than 1,000 professionals and partners. We just published an interview today, so definitely check that out, which goes into a bit more detail about what Supercell is looking for and why they're doing it. One of the interesting things that came out was a few. So in terms of their investment, they actually help with hiring, which I thought was interesting. So they don't just do the money, give you some independence, and then just leave you. Yeah, they actually, if you need to recruit, they can help with that if you need that. Their community of over 1,000 people is basically all the other companies they've invested in, as well as all the staff that they have. I mean, I feel like the 1,000 figure is kind of inflated because you're probably not going to speak to every single person. Sorry, not every one of those is going to be available to chat with, but there's obviously a lot of extremely experienced people at Supercell, which runs its teams like separate businesses, plus all these other businesses that they're investing in. It sounds quite interesting for knowledge sharing, and it sounds very Finnish because they're very well known for that culture in Finland's games industry, which is really in part what's helped it become such a big hub. And then one of the other things that is they just said that they are actively keeping an eye on M&A opportunities. So they've obviously just completed the full acquisition of Space Ape, turned it into Supercell London. Interesting that they're also looking at, I guess, fully acquiring someone, because I did ask them. They sort of answered. So I spoke with Jaakko Harlas, who's the head of investments, and I was just like, why do this at all? Basically, why do investments? Because why not just focus on developing your games and making some hits? Because ultimately, Squadbusters and Moko haven't really hit the highs at all. that so far that you'd expect of Supercell. And then why not do like big acquisitions? Really, Playtiga's acquiring Superplay. These like some sort of almost transformative deal, or one that has at least a very serious impact ultimately on your bottom line and brings like some of the market leaders into your company. But they seem to just want to do everything. And so he said Supercell invests in other games companies to broaden its reach beyond the walls of its own studios. Not every talented founder wants to join an existing company. Many want to build something on their own back. By backing independent teams, we can support that ambition while also learning from it. Then he said, this approach gives us access to a wider talent pool, fresh perspectives on game development, and exposure to genres, platforms, creative approaches outside our core focus. And then it says about empowering others. They're literally doing everything, right? So the changes that they made, they kind of split Supercell itself almost into two parts initially, which is the new games program, and then have the Spark initiative to put together teams. They even have like psychologists to help put those together. That was initially opened internally, and then now they're taking external developers. So they have Spark as well as investing in companies that I guess want more independence, even though in theory Supercell's quite hands off. Yeah. And then they got the live games teams, and then now they're expanding also into film and TV. So there is nothing that Supercell isn't doing to grow. I guess it must be feeling pretty ambitious after a good year, and they obviously have big plans, like we were just talking about with their IPs. So yeah, anyway, good for the industry that if Supercell wants to invest more money after the last couple of years where there's not been that much investment, and it's kind of on the rise a little bit at the moment, but it's good to have a big backer like Supercell. Right, so that brings us to the end of this week's PocketGamer.biz podcast week in mobile games. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Next week, we're going to have a very special episode. It's our 50th episode of this particular show. Can't believe it's been 50 episodes. I think we've only missed a few.
Yeah. We had, it was a slow start this year, but other than that, I think we've been pretty consistent with it.
But I've learned not to get ill again, basically, for a month. But yeah, please tune in. We'll try and bring on some special guests for a very special episode. So thank you for everyone that's been supporting us and listening, or these days watching the episodes. We actually started calling it the Week in Views, because that's one of the regulars we do on the site. And then I was suddenly like, wouldn't the Week in Mobile Games make more sense?
Yeah. And now you can view us. It's not called the Week in View.
No, I guess. Yeah, didn't think of that. Once again, thank you for your support, and thanks, Aaron, for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good to be here, as always.
And we'll see you all again next week. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.